As a domiciliary care worker, you are providing practical support to people in their own home. This may well include the handling and preparation of food. It's a crucial area in the prevention of illness for your service users, and it's your responsibility to make sure that you understand and follow high standards of hygiene and safety. The Food Safety Act lays out your legal responsibilities. You have a duty to handle food safely and avoid the risk of food poisoning. Keep yourself and your work area clean. Wear suitable protective clothing used for food preparation only. Protect food from contamination. Follow correct temperature controls during preparation. Tell your employer if you have food poisoning symptoms or any infectious disease, illness or infected cuts. Advise your service user if they are endangering their health through poor food hygiene. Inform your manager if you have concerns about food hygiene. Every year it is estimated that 5.5 million people in the UK suffer from food poisoning. It is unpleasant and debilitating, and it can also prove fatal. About 200 people a year die in the UK as a result of it.
Morning, Mrs. Barnes.
And many cases are caused by poor food handling. Older people, young children and anyone in poor health are especially vulnerable. And it's likely that most of your service users will fall into one of these categories. Symptoms can include diarrhoea, vomiting, nausea and fever, and usually come on suddenly. Most food poisoning is caused by germs being present on food. These germs, bugs or bacteria, are minute and invisible to the naked eye. But if they are consumed, the effects can be serious. Bacteria can be found everywhere, on our clothes and skin, in the earth, on air and water, in rubbish bins, on cleaning cloths, on pets and pests, and of course on raw food. Most are harmless, but given the right conditions, some can multiply to dangerous levels at a frightening speed. As a domiciliary care worker, you have a vital part to play in making sure that your service users reduce their risk of food poisoning. You need to understand how to handle, store and prepare food for service users, and what advice to offer them so that they can take precautions of their own. Remember, to a vulnerable person, your input could be life-saving. So what are the key areas where your knowledge can make a difference? Broadly, they fall into two categories: personal hygiene and food hygiene. Bacteria exist everywhere. We all carry them on our hands, clothes, even our jewellery, without knowing it. So good personal hygiene is therefore vital. Personal cleanliness can drastically reduce the risk of food poisoning and illness. The main areas of personal hygiene we will look at are your hands, your clothes, and your health. Hands that may appear clean tell another story when examined under ultraviolet light, which clearly shows the remaining bacteria. Some bacteria can stay alive on our hands for up to 3 hours, and in that time can be spread to anything we touch, including food and other people. Regularly washing your hands throughout the day will remove the bacteria. It's especially important before, between and after tasks and activities that carry a high risk of picking up and spreading bacteria to food. You should always wash your hands before preparing food, between handling different types of raw foods like meat, fish, poultry and eggs, and touching food which is ready to eat or kitchen utensils. After, personal care of all service users, smoking, blowing your nose, cleaning, touching your hair or face, touching rubbish or waste bins or gardening, stroking or cleaning up after animals, and of course going to the toilet. Did you know that the amount of bacteria on our fingertips doubles after using the toilet? And yet up to half of all men and a quarter of women fail to wash their hands after they've been to the toilet. Knowing when to wash your hands is important, but so too is making sure you wash them properly. Simply rinsing under a running tap won't get rid of the buildup of bacteria. To wash your hands properly, you should take off your watch, rings and bracelets before you start. Always use warm water and soap. Rub your hands together vigorously for about 15 seconds, making sure both sides are washed thoroughly. Don't forget your wrists and forearms, around the thumbs, between each finger, and around and under the nails. Rinse thoroughly with clean water. Ideally, use a paper towel to turn the tap off. Dry using a clean dry towel, or if not available, a paper towel. Make sure you dry thoroughly. Did you know that bacteria spreads more easily if hands are wet? In fact, 1,000 times as many bacteria can be spread from damp hands as dry hands. You should make sure that your hair is clean and tied back if necessary. Never brush, comb or touch your hair when you are in the kitchen or near food, or after you have put on your protective clothing. 1 millimetre of human hair can contain 50,000 bacteria. You must wear suitable protective clothing that you keep for food preparation only. This should be a clean, washable overall or apron, or a disposable one put on over your clothes. Even if you are in a hurry, don't be tempted to wipe your hands on your clothing. Stop what you are doing and wash them under the tap. And remember, dry them thoroughly. Avoid jewellery and keep your nails short, clean and unvarnished. Cover all cuts, burns and sores and change dressings regularly. And remember to use a waterproof coloured dressing when covering wounds, so that it's easily visible if it comes off. You should avoid touching or scratching any part of your face when handling food, as your nose, mouth, eyes and ears can carry bacteria. Try to avoid smoking while at work, and never smoke while preparing food. Some agencies have a non-smoking policy, and you should check with your manager. Make sure you take off your protective layer before going to the toilet or leaving the clean food preparation area.
Hi, it's Parveen.
If you feel unwell, have a stomach bug or food poisoning, a bad cold, sore throat, skin infection or wound, you should tell your manager and avoid handling foods for others. Similarly, if you have been in close contact with someone with food poisoning or sickness and diarrhea, at home or at work, you should let your manager know. Coughing and sneezing can spread bacteria and infections very easily. Be sure to turn away from food or work surfaces to cough or sneeze, and cover your mouth and nose to prevent bug spreading, preferably with a disposable tissue. Then wash your hands again before you continue. Now let's take a look at food hygiene. As a home carer, you may be required to undertake food shopping for service users. Check with your manager on the procedure that you should use when handling your service users' money, and follow it precisely. If you do shop for your service user, make sure you understand their needs, preferences and tastes. If a service user is living on their own, buying smaller amounts of perishable foodstuffs such as dairy produce, raw meats and ready-to-eat cooked meats may be sensible. Smaller amounts will help to ensure the food is eaten before its use-by date and won't get wasted. When you are shopping, buy chilled and frozen foods last. Pack them together, ideally in an insulated bag or cool box, and put them straight in the user's fridge or freezer as soon as you can. Keep raw foods, meat, fish and poultry, fruit and veg, and ready-to-eat foods separate from each other. Pack foods that bruise or damage easily above other foods. Make sure ready-to-eat foods are within their use-by dates. When you are taking the shopping back to your service user's home, avoid putting it in warm places, near car heaters or in the sun for instance, and get there as quickly as possible. Food items should be unpacked immediately and stored correctly when you get back to the service user's home. If a service user is receiving meals via a home delivery service, follow the correct storage, cooking and serving instructions carefully. Remember, hot meals get delivered above 63 degrees. All containers should have a "not to be reheated, eat immediately" statement on the lid, so it is important to serve the meal as soon as possible. Storing food correctly is another effective way of avoiding food poisoning. Ask yourself these 3 questions. Is it stored in the right place, at the right temperature, for the right period of time? Fridge, freezer or cupboards? Know where different food should be stored and talk to your service user about this. Take care that you put items within easy reach of your service user. Remember, you aren't there all the time. Food will need to be kept at the right temperature to prevent bacteria growing. Does it need to be kept at room temperature, chilled or frozen? Always look at the storage instructions on the packaging and follow them. So what goes in the fridge? Refrigerating dairy produce, raw meats and cooked foods helps prevent most but not all harmful bacteria from growing. If these types of food are left standing at room temperature, the bacteria can multiply to dangerous levels. When you put food in the fridge, you should think about the following. Raw meat should be covered and go on the bottom shelf so it can't touch or drip onto ready-to-eat food. This is cross-contamination and a major source of food poisoning. Try not to overload the fridge. If cool air can't circulate, the food might not be kept cold enough. No open cans. Transfer contents to a container or covered bowl and use up within 2 days. Cover dishes and other containers with foil or film. Don't reuse foil or film to wrap other foods. Keep prepared cold foods in the fridge. When loading the fridge, you should put dairy products that can't drip, such as cheese, at the top. Below, you put cooked meat. Most people put the salad at the bottom, but it should go above raw meat which can drip. And at the very bottom, put the raw chicken. Now let's look at the freezer. Freezing certain food can lengthen its shelf life, but not even frozen food can be kept forever. Check the label on pre-packed food to see if it is suitable for home freezing. If so, freeze as soon as possible after purchase. The star marking panel on food labels indicates how long it can be stored, but it does depend on the capacity of the service user's freezer. Most freezers and fridge freezers will keep food at -18 degrees centigrade for a maximum of 3 months only. If your service user wants to freeze home-cooked foods, encourage them to use clean freezer bags and label them with the date and description of the food. Some foods, such as dairy produce and cooked ready-to-eat meats, need to be eaten within a short space of time and kept cold. Other foods, such as flour, pulses, canned and packet foods, last much longer and can be stored at room temperature. But even dried foods have limits on their storage time. No foods last forever, however well they're stored. Most pre-packed foods carry a use by or best before date. Encourage your service user to check them and also look out for packaging that has been opened. Once opened, follow the instructions on the packaging and never use after the use-by date. If you feel that food looks, tastes or smells off, you shouldn't prepare or serve it. But remember, it's not your food. Talk to the service user and never throw anything out without discussing it.
I really don't think you should be eating this. It's all right if I throw it away.
Oh, that'd be all right, T. I'll just cut the edges off.
But if you are really concerned that a service user is endangering themselves by the food they are eating on a regular basis, you should discuss it with your manager, who will assess the level of danger. The priority in the kitchen is to create an environment where bacteria cannot build up. Whether it is you that is preparing meals or the service user themselves, work surfaces should be cleaned frequently, as should utensils, other equipment, floors and storage areas. Waste food should be removed from the kitchen before you leave. When cleaning, try to use the right materials for the job if they are available. Detergents such as washing up liquids are designed to dissolve grease, oil and dirt. Disinfectants such as bleach are designed to kill germs. These are powerful agents and should not be used without care. Antibacterial cleaners are types of disinfectant and can kill bacteria. They often come in spray form. Disinfectants and antibacterial cleaners won't work unless they are used properly, so you should always follow the instructions. Dirty cloths are a great breeding ground for bacteria. Where practical, use disposable cloths. Use different cloths for separate areas. If you need to wash cloths, use hot water and soap, and then place in a suitable disinfectant. Rinse and hang to dry. Always be sure to store cleaning products away from foods and in proper containers. When you are washing up, change the water regularly and rinse items in clean hot water. Where possible, leave to drain until dry. Tea towels can be sources of cross-contamination. Wash them regularly on a hot wash cycle, but paper towels are preferable. If your service user has a dishwasher, use the right amounts of salt and detergent and keep the filter and all surfaces clean. The highest temperature cycle will be the most effective against bacteria. Kitchen rubbish bins are an obvious breeding ground for bacteria. Empty them as often as you can and encourage your service user to do the same. Tie up the bags before removing them to avoid food spilling onto the floor. Clean the bin itself regularly with hot water and disinfectant. Pests, such as insects and rodents, can carry bacteria and spread disease. So keep them out by closing doors and windows, keeping lids on dustbins, clearing spillages and waste promptly. Dispose of any food that may have come in contact with pests. And remember, if foods have to stand, keep them covered. Clean trays and areas where your service users eat their meals. Check if crumbs or bits of food have been trapped in or under furniture.
Yeah, look, I'm really worried. I'm at this
If the care provision is insufficient and the hygiene in the service user's home is getting out of control, you must inform your manager.
It's really not good. And
If a service user does have a serious pest infestation in their home, your manager will give you guidance on how to control it. They will decide if it is necessary to seek professional advice from a local environmental health department or a commercial pest control agency.
And he's got a history of violence.
The bacteria that cause food poisoning are at greater risk of multiplying and spreading when you are handling and preparing food. They are carried from one area to another by your fingers, utensils, even your clothes. This is what's called cross-contamination and is one of the common causes of food poisoning. Cooking kills most bacteria, but if you handle cooked food after raw food, you risk transferring harmful bacteria back onto the cooked food. We've talked about the need to wash your hands after handling raw foods like meat, fish or poultry. The same goes for knives, surfaces and chopping boards. If your service user doesn't have separate boards, you should wash, disinfect and dry them thoroughly between uses, before preparing cooked or ready-to-eat foods such as salads, cooked meats and sandwiches. Wash all vegetables thoroughly before use, especially if they're going to be eaten raw. Adequate cooking kills harmful bacteria, but only if the correct methods are followed. So here are a few points to remember. If using a conventional oven, remember to preheat fully. Follow recommended cooking times and oven temperatures, and do not cook food too far in advance. Always allow sufficient time for the food to be thoroughly cooked, and check it before serving. This is particularly important when cooking meat and meals from frozen. With pre-packaged frozen foods, follow instructions on defrosting or cooking from frozen. If defrosting, allow food to thaw fully before cooking. If you defrost in the fridge, use a dish to catch any juices that run out, as they may contain bacteria. Never refreeze food once it has started to thaw. If your service user has a microwave, familiarise yourself with its operation. This goes for any other cooking methods or equipment your service user may have. Remember, if you aren't sure, seek further information from your manager. When using a microwave, follow cooking instructions. Stir drinks and stir or turn food at least once. Allow the items to stand for a couple of minutes to avoid hot or cold spots. Only thaw food in a microwave oven if it is to be cooked immediately. Reheat foods as recommended by the manufacturer, but never more than once. Let hot food cool down before you put it in the fridge or freezer, but not for too long. Most dishes should be cooled sufficiently after an hour. Some cold foods that are to be eaten without cooking have a very high risk of causing serious food poisoning. The ones to treat with special care are cooked meat and poultry, dairy produce, cream cakes and desserts, egg products like mayonnaise, cooked rice, and seafood. They should be served as soon as possible after removing from the fridge, to prevent them getting warm and allowing any bacteria present to multiply. You can't see, taste, or smell bacteria. The only way you can be sure that food is safe is for you as a home carer to practice good, effective temperature control, safe food preparation, and personal hygiene at all times. So let's recap. Wash your hands correctly and at the right times to prevent the spread of bacteria onto food. Wear clean, protective clothing when preparing food. Work in a clean environment, clearing up spills as you go. Store foods in the right place, at the right temperature, to prevent bacteria multiplying. Keep raw and cooked foods away from each other. Cook and heat food thoroughly to make it safe. Report ill health in yourself and the service user to your manager. In doing these things, you can be more confident that you are doing everything in your power to provide the service user food that is safe to eat.